Today, we embark on our first 2027 NFL mock draft. This is a continuation of my 3-round 2026 NFL mock draft with trades. So, we're going to be reviewing basically what's gone on in that mock while we're still talking about this one. Now, this is not necessarily predictive. It does have a custom draft order. This is just designed to be able to talk about some fun players, some fun connections, and then see if we can maybe guess one or two that maybe can come true. Super excited for that. Let's jump right into this. Starting out, we do already have some teams without a pick, and I'm not going to leave you out of this. So I do highly recommend for y'all to go and watch the actual mock draft, but I'm still going to give you guys a recap of what happened. For the Colts, who sent their first round pick to the New York Jets in trade for Sauce Gardner, you guys ended up getting a good haul of still LT Overton and Bryce Lance. LT Overton to be one of the bigger edges. Lou Amarino loves big edges, and the value was great at the end of the second. Bryce Lance, I'm wondering whether Alec Pierce is going to be on the team without AD Mitchell, Alec Pierce. I do think there's definitely room in there for somebody who has the good size and a deep threat ability. Then, of course, the Dallas Cowboys as well. Don't want to leave y'all out here. As a Dallas native, don't want to, shade anybody, but you guys ended up sending this first round pick as part of your deal for Quinnen Williams. And you got Keldrick Falk, Anthony Hill, Chris Johnson, as well as Romello Height. So ended up double dipping at edge right there. Got a big edge and more of a DPR to have a nice little lightning and thunder approach. Then, of course, Anthony Hill at the end of the first was great value. Chris Johnson getting some cornerback value, a big +2. So again, highly recommend you guys to go over and watch that. And again, there's a lot of trades that happened that shifted things around. So again, going to plug my own video there, but let's jump right into this. With the number 1 overall selection, we have the Miami Dolphins, and it was a tough one. Again, you guys get to see the draft class as well, so I don't want to get you guys wondering oh, is he only going to do that for the teams that don't have a pick? No, we're going to review how this ends up flowing into one another. The Dolphins have a lot of issues, and it's really cool to be able to see that you get good value with some big impact players. And by the way, I ended up realizing that PFF did not give one of the third-round picks from the Philadelphia Eagles to you guys. I actually thought Justin Jolie is a very good fit in your system, so I just swapped the Eagles pick for yours. So keeping that in mind, you drafted Carnell Tate, Julian Neal, Emmanuel Neal Warren, Caleb Banks, and Justin Jolie as part of that draft class. And we get Julian Sand to start throwing back to Carnell Tate. If you guys sitting at number 1, I think at that point the money for Tua is going to be good enough to goodbye him. And you know what? It is about time. I also think that there's so many holes on your team and you're in a pretty competitive division. I think the Jets are a very underrated squad. We'll be able to talk about them 3 times today. But Julian Sayin is a fantastic quarterback. You can end up talking about getting Jeremiah Smith in there. I understand that pushback. Do not worry. You'll not have to wait long to hear about Jeremiah Smith. But Julian Sayin from the get-go, he's been phenomenal in pretty much every single time that you get to see him. Even when he makes mistakes, it's pretty clear that, they're definitely learnable mistakes. And for him being so young and them actually kind of toning back the offense earlier in the year, it's just funny to see that they are trying to keep the training wheels on for somebody that could easily just take them off and go full blast. And again, this is a team that lost to almost elite NFL running backs in Henderson as well as Judkins and replaced him with very, very, very much inferior talent. And Julian Sayin is still able to make a very, very strong case to be a number 1 pick. So he's not being carried by the running game. And I'm not saying Will Howard was, because I love Will. I hope he ends up getting some playing time for my Steelers. But Julian Sayin, the pick there at number 1. I told you guys you don't have to wait very long to hear about Jeremiah Smith, and he's the selection here at number 2 to the Tennessee Titans. I do think that the Titans still have some pretty big areas of where they'll need to grow. Some people will say, well, if you're sitting at number 2, is Cam Ward the guy? I don't think Cam Ward would be the reason they're sitting here at 2. There's a lot of organizational friction. If you were going to be honest, just the whole entire coaching situation, there's always some rough patches. Unless you guys end up sniping Clint Kubiak, I don't really know if there's going to be a lot of positive momentum in that category. So with everybody else also trying to improve year over year, I do think that you're building the foundation for awesomeness, maybe not the full package. So maybe I think you'll be a lot more competitive if you guys end up drafting Ruben Bain Jr., Chris Bell, Davison Igbinosun, and Chandler Rivers. Definitely super keyed in on the secondary right there after you lost McCreary as well as Jarvis Brownlee. So basically replaced those two respectively. And then at wide receiver, got our kind of like AJ Brown type of receiver, and then Ruben Bain. But if you're sitting here at number 2, I love Chim DK, love Elikai Omaner, love Chris Bell. It's not going to stop me from going after a pretty much top 5 receiver off the bat in Jeremiah Smith. Dante Moore is next. Yes, I ended up having players return, and it's a very crucial thing for you guys to understand that some of these players in here I did have return from the 2026 class, and that will end up changing some things, and it does kind of like limit us on being able to talk solely about the 2027 class, but I do think it's very realistic. When I hear Todd McShay saying, guys, I'm hearing from inside the building, very trustworthy sources, that they're all on board, the family's on board, the coaching is on board, Dante's on board, he's going back to school, that we should probably lean into that and understand that that's probably the case. I trust Todd McShay. I don't think, even if he gets it wrong, that he's trying to lead us astray, but he's doing a fantastic job there on the McShay show. Nothing but support for those guys, and they have no way of being able to hear this. They don't watch probably this type of stuff anyway, so I'm not glazing to try to get them on the show. It's just, I genuinely want to recommend good content, stuff that I like to watch. I want you guys to be able to enjoy as well. But Dante Moore, quarterback out of Oregon with an extra year of progression, could try to challenge for the number 1 pick. But again, we're talking about 2 amazing talents out of Ohio State there that could try to go back-to-back natties. It's very, very possible. But Dante Moore, a great selection anyways. He joins Caleb Downs, Trevor Gooseby, who played right tackle last year for some games. So hoping that he ends up hitting his stride there for Dante Moore in year 2. Of course, we'll end up seeing if the talent that you have on the roster with all these injuries ends up actually stepping up. We can change it, of course. And then we got Jacob Rodriguez and a small trade up for Brendan Sorsby at the end of the 3rd. Pick number 100, or it might have been like 97, is not going to stop me from going after, a major upgrade here. Sorsby will be a fun piece. If he ends up shining, send him to another organization that maybe doesn't have the solidified long-term answer. And hell, if he's that good, then maybe that's a very, very good sign. But you can end up going after an edge rusher at this point, but I could not pass on Dante Moore. Number 4, we have the Panthers. And again, if you guys are mad about the draft order, just be happy if you guys are much better than this. Enjoy the fact that you guys get to even contemplate getting a really good player if you guys don't end up being at the spot. This is more for fun than anything. I did end up actually taking time to think about it, but at the same time, this is, projecting like 1.5 seasons ahead and projecting all these rookies and how they would end up performing. So there's a lot of variability in here. But if the Panthers are sitting here in the top 10, again, they're going to be looking at this quarterback class. And Dylan Raiola gets a lot of hate for being weirdly copycatish of Patrick Mahomes, or maybe Mahomes is copying him. But I'm going to be honest, I was watching Emmett Johnson, and I could not stop seeing Dylan Raiola in pretty crucial situations making fantastic plays, like legitimate eye-popping plays. Am I the best quarterback scout in the world? No. It's my goal to be one day. It's my goal to be the best at everything, but I know I'm a really far ways away, so maybe like my word is not gospel in this aspect, but it is an honest take that I do think this guy has the ceiling to be something truly special. And he's already shown it, being being the starter this year, and having a good amount of starting experience, especially by the time he would come out. I think that he would be more than just like a 1-year wonder, even if he has a great year and puts him in this category. So he joins Clev Lubin, the edge rusher, Dylan Thieneman, a defensive back, and Kyle Lewis, the linebacker. I debated going after Leonard Moore here, but thinking about where you guys would be at as an organization, most likely there'd be some changes, and Bryce Young would be on the chopping block, to say the least. Some people think he should be right now, but we go to pick number 5, and the Commanders are here. It's very possible you guys are going to be in the 20s. We just don't know. Your roster is so volatile. Like, which Jaden Daniels are we going to get? How healthy is he going to get? That's the biggest problem to me, is like, how healthy is JD? Are you guys going to rush him back from injuries? Are you guys going to actually give him the proper time to heal? Look what happened in San Francisco. When they had a competent backup quarterback, they let their quarterback rest, get healthy. As much as it pissed me off as a Brock Purdy fantasy owner, it's still something that ended up being a very, very good decision, because Brock comes back and automatically ends up dropping over 40 on the Arizona Cardinals. So I hope you guys have that approach. I don't trust the organization to do that, unfortunately, based on the actions that you guys have done so far. But I do think that there's a lot of pieces on this whole entire team that are more so short-term fillers and not long-term answers. And that's a little bit scary for me trying to project it a year and a half in the future. So you end up getting a fantastic corner in Brandon Cisse, cornerback out of South Carolina. Todd McShay says he's going to declare. So I do think that there's a strong chance that you guys end up actually having an opportunity to draft him, and he's amazing corner. Then you got Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver. I absolutely love that addition there. And Akeem Mesidor is a super high floor edge. But I do think you guys need to continue drafting edge. And Dylan Stewart's an absolute freak show. Timing off the snap is ridiculous. And I mean, he doesn't need an introduction. He's someone who deserves to be a top 5 player. There's a lot of very top tier talents in this class. And we say that almost every year, but these are guys who have been performing multiple years at a very, very high level and are out competing certain players that we're trying to get drafted now. So I would just say this, Dylan Stewart would be probably a rush to the podium kind of decision there for Washington if they're sitting there at number 5. And number 6, we have the New Orleans Saints, and they drafted Arvell Reese, linebacker / edge out of Ohio State, Caleb Lamu, the tackle out of Utah, switched him to guard, and then Ian Strong, the wide receiver out of Rutgers. But Ian Strong doesn't stop me from drafting an absolute unit as an ex-wide receiver. I could have ended up going after a quarterback for them. It's maybe the case, but also with the amount of quarterbacks in this class, I wanted to go best player available, and I know that in day 2, there are going to be players, like Arch Manning. It's possible. He can honestly stay for another year or two. A lot of these quarterbacks might just decide to continue like pushing stuff down the road. But Cam Coleman, he's just, some people think he's better than Jeremiah Smith. And there's some tape out there that I'm not going to say is better than Jeremiah's, but he ends up challenging to be, someone who could be drafted in the top 5, top 10 this year. So Cam Coleman, an absolute stud there out of Auburn. Then we have Leonard Moore, cornerback from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, going to the New York Jets at pick number 7. Their draft class consisted of Ty Simpson, Denzel Boston, both via trade up, and then Zaki Wheatley, the defensive back out of Penn State. I do think that corner is not the biggest priority for them. Beastie's been performing well, Zaire Thomas in there, as well as Jarvis Brownlee. However, when you can end up getting someone who is on the tier of Sauce Gardner and somehow get him at number 7, do it. Just do it. Be happy. Corners are so expensive anyways, and it's worth upgrading. So super happy for that. Jordan Seaton, the left tackle from Colorado, goes at number 8 to the Cleveland Browns. He joins Fernando Mendoza, Mekhi Lemon, Quincy Rhodes, the edge rusher, and Carter Smith, the left tackle, but probably kicked into guard based on most likely the arm length of Indiana. And Jordan Seaton's a player who, in my opinion, in this draft class that would be starting this year, I do think he'd end up going probably top 5, top 10. So, I mean, him having another year under his belt, I don't think would be changing too much of that. And it's tough. I mean, there's not that many tackles that are popping off right now based on the ones, because a lot of the good ones could come out a little bit early and maybe underdeveloped. But if we do see someone like Trevor Gooseby return, maybe he can end up developing even more and challenging for the top of the draft. Right now, I'm not seeing a ton of competition there, though, for the top of the draft. So it might be another weak tackle class, which is a little bit scary for some teams that are in the market for a tackle for the long haul. Then we have Colin Simmons, the edge rusher out of Texas, going at number 9 to the Minnesota Vikings. I just thought is best player available. I wanted Colin Simmons, and I've been happy with him in the top 3. So don't think this is me trying to indict Colin Simmons. He has been very similar to Dylan Stewart, amazing since the moment he touched the field. Like, there are just teams that need a quarterback that were just like, oh, do I go Colin Simmons or do I go quarterback here? And this class is that good in the top realm, at least for now, that I couldn't ignore it. And he joins Avion Terrell, Blake Miller, and Parker Brailsford. I wanted to address the offensive line with some questions over the future at right tackle, as well as, the concussion concerns with Kelly and whether he'd even be playing. So address the offensive line, ended up getting ourselves another top tier edge to join Dallas Turner as part of the future of this Vikings edge core, as well as a plethora of other players. At number 10, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Going after CJ Bailey, quarterback at NC State. Got some pushback because I didn't include a Kyler Murray trade. Honestly, it wouldn't have really, I wouldn't be trading like, I don't know if I'd be trading like a this year third round pick as part of it. Maybe you would. And honestly, maybe like, yeah, I mean, you could just throw some names out there. Maybe like the Browns want to just test it out. I don't know what the fuck. But honestly, I didn't really think that for the current situation of K1 and the current price, having to pay the contract and all that, I didn't really believe that it was something I needed to include. Maybe you guys disagree. I respect that. I mean, I love you guys for saying that. It's a valid argument, and my only counter to it is I don't know. I didn't really feel like the value or the necessity was there, especially with the amount of quarterbacks that would have been on rookie contracts that provide some, exciting upside at a lower cost. So that's my description there. But CJ Bailey is awesome. I mean, he's coming off a pretty bad week versus Miami. Granted, this whole entire offense, and especially the system, does not usually lean towards giving CJ the best opportunity. And unfortunately, you look at last year, Casey Concepcion ends up, transferring schools and is all of a sudden going from like, ugh, to wow, this guy is going to be a superstar in the NFL. So I can't really blame CJ Bailey fully for the issues they have. He has some jaw dropping throws, want to give him the love, and I love the mobility as well. It should end up working well in Arizona. Then at number 11, we had the New York Giants selecting Ryan Williams, wide receiver out of Alabama. I thought the value was perfect here. Not many other players that I thought would like challenge Ryan Williams. His drops are becoming a massive issue, but you can end up pairing Jordan Tyson, Malik Neighbors, and Ryan Williams. You don't have to think about a wide receiver for probably the next 10 to 15 years, as long as you can end up keeping them on roster. Looking at getting Caden Green, I love that for the interior offensive line position. I believe that Marcus Bowe could be the long-term right tackle. So that's where my thought process is in terms of the tackle situation. And then again, Caden Green is a great backup for left tackle based on him playing it right now. Defensively speaking, I could have looked at some corner here. Jermod McCoy crossed my mind. He was another guy who was part of this, but I just thought the value was too good. You go BPA, your wide receiver core is completely filled out. You have your own basically your own Slim Reaper as well. And you just pretty much let Dart, Scatabo go off as, defensive secondaries can't really load the box when you have an elite receiving trio. Jermod McCoy, speaking of the guy, goes at number 12 to the Atlanta Falcons. And you might say, why are the Falcons at 12 again, Alex? Well, because you guys ended up doing a great job solving a big issue that you guys had, but you still haven't put the full pieces together. And I do think that when you add Amari Washington and CJ Daniels into the mix, it doesn't necessarily make your team overwhelmingly more powerful, while these other teams are probably getting a little bit more reinforcements to the table. So it's not saying your team is bad. It's just saying that you guys aren't improving at the rate that maybe some other teams are. I'm hoping I'm dead wrong on this, though. But at the same time, this is not a full prediction. We don't know the record, or we don't know the schedule yet. So, ultimately, we'll actually see if we do our schedule predictions, what the actual order I suspect would be. But the Falcons, if you get Amari Washington and CJ Daniels, I just don't think it moves the needle that much. They're still very, very big contributors, frees up guys to be able to play certain positions. But in terms of wins, not just roster strength, I don't know how much it contributes. And, Jermod McCoy being a strong boundary corner too would be fantastic. Again, he's a true junior, hasn't played at all this year. So I do think it's pretty logical. Go back to school, make some money, and come out when healthy. Number 13, we have the San Francisco 49ers, especially with all these injuries, guys coming back. We'll see how the health is. And then, CMC, I mean, he hasn't necessarily been the most efficient back this year. I think it was like a week or two ago, he was at 3.5 yards per carry. Obviously, it's something that needs to improve noticeably. But Isaac Brown is an absolute stud. You guys have gone to Louisville before for their athletic running backs. Isaac Brown is a game-changing back. Running back matters to this team. Even when you guys don't need a running back, you'll draft it on day 2. So don't try to play that game. And he joins Caden Proctor, David Bailey, and Keon Saab. Those are the big positions to target. And based on the value here, I thought about Ahmad Hardy, but Isaac Brown, just again with the connection of San Francisco to Louisville, with them drafting Isaac Guerendo, I could see them loving the athletic profile of Isaac Brown and trying to regain that running back centric focus that you guys can end up having a strong finish to. At number 14, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars going CJ Carr, quarterback out of Notre Dame. You might say, why the hell is CJ Carr in here? I just say you got to look with your eyes. I know Tom Brady has a connection to, I believe, his dad or his uncle. CJ Carr, if I'm not mistaken, does have NFL ties, but I do think that, the Tom Brady support of it all could end up like leeching its way into a much more newer organization. But I ended up drafting AJ Harris, Eli Raridan, and Elijah Surratt. I swear I ended up drafting a quarterback for y'all as well. That one might be on me. I think I ended up drafting a quarterback for y'all off the top of my head. If I did, then I apologize for not listing it there. I thought I ended up putting it there, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal because CJ Carr would replace that guy. But CJ Carr, really, really good quarterback. He's somebody who has shown early on to have equal impact as Riley Leonard, who was a seasoned veteran, and that's awesome. Again, get some nods from Tom Brady, who really likes him. So this is definitely somebody that might be turning some heads. And honestly, he was a guy who I might have surprised earlier if I thought the Raiders would have been more competitive because of Tom Brady's influence on the org. Number 15, we have the Houston Texans drafting Trey Des Green, tight end out of LSU. This guy in his flashes has been absolutely dominant. I do think this team is kind of just flirting with the idea of needing a tight end, and drafting a stud like Trey Des could absolutely be the answer. He joins a class of Peter Woods, Austin Sierreveld, and Jonah Coleman. So I think that this would provide a new value that, we're not going to be crossing paths with any pretty important recent draft picks. And you just continue making the team more potent, more competitive. And as long as the team, you should be making the playoffs. It's just very hard to find the teams that don't make the playoffs based on, my optimistic outlook on a lot of the teams and how they're built. Ahmad Hardy does go at number 16 overall to the Denver Broncos. He joins a class of Jennings Dunker, Jeremy Bernard, and Harold Perkins. And honestly, that feels like such a Sean Payton kind of draft. Jennings Dunker, very, very strong center, right tackle right now, but, wrestling background. Jeremy Bernard, great after the catch, very high floor. And then Harold Perkins, a very flexible edge linebacker hybrid there for Vance Joseph. Ahmad Hardy is the perfect pairing for RJ Harvey. So you have Hardy and Harvey. First off, love that. But also you got lightning and thunder, because Hardy is somebody who could end up just churning out 300-yard games. He's a bell cow back, but that's also something that you want Harvey to go and be able to take advantage of, as well as teams are trying to, getting gassed. And now you can end up having some lightning get even more production out of it. So it would be cool to see a two-headed race with you guys. So we'll see if you guys end up having a little bit of a slump, a lot of very close games. Usually teams don't necessarily keep that consistency of winning the close games. Number 17, we have the Bengals going Xavier Brown, cornerback out of Alabama. He joins Mansour Delane to finally be able to turn this entire defensive backcourt, DJ Turner, Mansour Delane, and Xavier Brown, into something that is a legitimate jaw-dropping threat. It was also best player available. I didn't really want to force somebody like Charles Jagasaw into the situation. I did debate it, but Zion Young to be a really good edge there, and then Austin Barber to be a flexible guard piece for you going the long haul. Again, I think Mansour Delane has some potential slot aspects to his game as well. Some people worry about the arm length. Xavier Brown, as long as you have good safety help over the top, which you guys don't, I think he has some flashes of being absolutely brilliant. So I love that about him. Some really good off coverage skills. We'll see how that ends up working out in the AFC North. At number 18, we have the Jets going KJ Bolden, defensive back out of Georgia. This is the Dallas Cowboys selection. And he joins Ty Simpson, Denzel Boston, Zaki Wheatley, and Leonard Moore. So think about that defensive back room. KJ Bolden, Zaki Wheatley. Then at corner, Azareye'h Thomas, Jarvis Brownlee, Leonard Moore. And then also, you can't leave out B. Steve, Brandon Stevens. You're talking about a team that could end up possibly competing. And again, people who want to shit on Ty Simpson, imagine trying to complain about quarterback having just one bad game and throwing them out. It's a tough team there. It's SEC. It's not easy. And Oklahoma has some fucking dogs. So one of them we'll be talking about later in this episode that most people haven't really been talking about. But at number 19, we have the Chargers getting their long-term answer at edge, Yonze Pierre, edge rusher out of Alabama. He's going to basically be your long-term Odafe Owe. He joins Vega Ione, Lyndon Cooper, and then also Darrell Jackson. So you got the interior of the offensive line got fixed there, and then we ended up getting our run defending nose. We finally get some pass rush help here with Yonze, who is an absolute stud this year, by the way. Could end up coming out, but I think he's a redshirt sophomore. I would think that he'd end up staying and trying to go for first round. At number 20, we have the Chicago Bears going Xavier Chaplin, left tackle out of Auburn. I usually say offensive tackle. I don't know why I typed in left tackle today, but he ends up joining Caden McDonald, Malachi Lawrence, and Jadarian Price, fixed the D line, got ourselves a weapon at running back, and then ended up saying, Ozzy Trapilo, respectfully, we have some competition. Could end up kicking it a guard if you need to. Xavier Chaplin, I mean, worst case scenario, I guess you could try that. I'd probably just put Ozzy at guard at that point, but I just don't trust tackles going right tackle to left tackle. I held my my own bias there, and I ended up going Caden McDonald when there were some good tackles on the board. But Xavier Chaplin does have the sky high ceiling. I hope it ends up paying out for him, and we'll see. We'll see. He definitely does have the potential, just did not really live up to it this year. At number 21, we have the Steelers going their quarterback here, Darian Menza, quarterback out of Duke. He's going to go in with Casey Concepcion, Isaiah World, Jaden Mayava, which we'll talk about in a second, Malik Muhammad, and Lee Hunter. Round 3 quarterbacks don't really hold a ton of place for me in terms of needing to start. I think this is just one spot on the Steelers that we need to get done long term, and Darian Menza fits the Arthur Smith system very well. It pretty much has an upgraded mobility of Rodgers with the arm talent upside that we're finally seeing being deployed in this offense that Arthur Smith has not necessarily had on a consistent basis. Jaden Mayava could be the long-term answer, but again, if you can end up throwing a bunch of darts at a dartboard and end up seeing what ends up actually hitting the target, or throwing some shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, it's very, very important. We have a lot of positions pretty well filled out. We need to end up hitting. And Darian Menza, I do think, is a very important piece of that. And Mayava, he's someone you definitely can sit and develop. Will Howard, I mean, it's a great trio for the long haul there with those three. So next, we have at number 22, Mario Craver, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. This guy is as good as Casey Concepcion based on just my initial thoughts on him. I've watched corners go up against Texas A&M, and he dices. He slices and dices. He's dangerous. And for the Packers, I mean, you're just sitting there at 22. The value's impeccable. You drafted all defense in the first 3 rounds of the last draft with D'Angelo Velcro Pons and Dom Orange. So let's look at offense. And weaponry is still something you're still nailing down. Let's go at 22 once again and go after Mario Craver. At number 23, we have the Jets via, this one was via Indy. And they go Nick Harbor, wide receiver out of currently South Carolina. I assume it will be Miami, but we'll see whatever team pays him and where he goes. But, this guy is a stud, over 240 pounds. Someone said 244, is going to be running in the 4.2s. Just a difference maker. But it is just very hard to nail down. And he's going to join a really, really good wide receiver crew. Denzel Boston, Garrett Wilson, A.D. Mitchell. AD has not shown the consistent hands required to ignore someone like Nick Harbor. So Nick Harbor is going to be someone also based on his usage. I think early on as he continues to polish, he'll end up being a really good 4 that ends up developing into a 3, if not a 2. So that's worth the risk right there. And again, with these picks, you have to just see what works. And Ty Simpson being able to get Nick Harbor added to a great wide receiver core is a pretty good recipe for success. Could have ended up looking at running back here as well. Honestly, there are guys like Caden Durham you could throw out there, but Caden's a little bit athletically limited. I know Jordan Marshall out of Michigan's another one. Emmett Johnson, if he returns, could be considered. But again, there's more than one round in this as well. Number 24, we have O.J. Frederick, cornerback out of Miami, going to the Detroit Lions. It does look like with the amount of injuries that the Lions are sustaining, I don't know how many guys they're viewing as consistent long-term options. The best ability is availability, and O.J. Frederick's been consistently solid for the past 2 years. I wish I had the pleasure of seeing him in person at SMU. He was not present for that game, and so, did not get to see whether he'd pass the eye test, but I do know that Miami did lose that game, and maybe they would have ended up winning it if they had a little bit more of a dominant presence at the cornerback position. So really, really love his game. He joins a class of Caleb Tiernan, Cassius Howell, and Logan Jones. Honestly, one of the guys who I really wish I did include in this, now that I'm thinking of, is Keontae Scott, the defensive back out of Miami. I think that guy's a stud, and it's just tough to put that many defensive backs in the first. But Nick Marsh, wide receiver out of Michigan State, goes to the Buffalo Bills. It's crazy now when you look at it. Nick Marsh is a great wide receiver. Chris Brazzell, going to be joining him there, but Keon Coleman's healthy scratch. That's kind of nuts. You also got CJ Allen and AJ Halsey. So really good trio there of players, all contributors respectively. And then Nick Marsh could end up being a true one in my opinion. But again, really good wide receiver classes back-to-back years. I don't really know right now. There's not many true freshmen that are showing out. I know that, Missouri has one, but, we might end up seeing a little bit of a dip in the quality in 2028. Number 26, speaking of the good wide receiver class, I felt like it was best player available to go after Bryant Wesco, wide receiver out of Clemson. He joined Sonny Styles, R. Mason Thomas, and Max Clare. So good weapon there for the Buccaneers. Just continue just developing and just acquiring really good receiving talent and seeing if you guys can continue being competitive. I love where we ended up targeting. The secondary should be great. The defensive line looks like it will continue being great. We're developing the linebacking core. And, Max Clare could end up being a really good player there at 20 or in the third round for you guys. So, number 27, we have the Baltimore Ravens. This is the player I was talking about earlier. He was part of the last play versus Alabama this week. Eli Bowen, cornerback out of Oklahoma. He joins TJ Parker, Christian Miller, and Jaden Roberts from the 2026 class. And, Bowen is a little bit of a smaller corner, but with Jair Alexander being acquired from y'all in the offseason last year, it makes, or I guess it'll be like the year before, but you guys know what I mean. It's obvious that size is not necessarily the number one telltale sign. Eli Bowen's been fantastic this year and is someone who I wanted to slip into the first round. But again, there's a lot of really good players. Could have ended up putting Ashton Hampton at the spot, but I just want to give Eli Bowen the nod. At number 28, this is Coy Parrish, defensive back out of Minnesota. I could have easily put Keontae Scott here as well. The Eagles end up drafting him, of course, and they joined Colton Hood, cornerback out of Tennessee. Same thing as Joshua Josephs, and then Max Ianker. I debated going after a right tackle here, but I do think Max Ianker could be the long-term option. If you draft him in the third round, I highly doubt that you're going to draft his replacement in the following year. Defensive back, long-term, could end up being the smart move here as you pair him up with another early pick in Andrew Bakuba. Number 29, speaking of Emil Wagner, we send him from Notre Dame right tackle to the New England Patriots. He joins Kenyon Sadiq and Denai Dennis Sutton. We'll end up seeing throughout this year how reliable Swinson could be. Also, shout out to Josh Farmer, since Milton Williams is going to, I believe, be on IR. We're going to see multiple games of him having a much more increased workload. We'll see how that goes. But right tackle for the long haul needs to be solved. Emil is still underweight, but he's somebody who has a crazy amount of talent. Number 30, we have the Seahawks. And we addressed the guard spot with Emmanuel Pregnon. We got a really solid high floor pass rushing edge in Derek Moore and got a good contributory every down linebacker in Deontay Lawson. But long-term center-wise, I still think this team could absolutely use an upgrade. I thought I had Connor Lew return, and it's just good value at this point. So solidify the interior of the offensive line with 3 first-round picks. But, I mean, at the end of the day, look at how the Cowboys had like a very strong offensive line structure. You're going to have 4 first-round picks and I believe a second-round pick. You do need that. I mean, you have a strong focal point. I do think running back as well is another position you could look at. I didn't really have a running back I was desperate to go for in the first, a third one. So again, feel free to put some shouts out there. There's plenty of very good backs in college right now that could probably make a really strong case for the end of the first. But I really do think that finalizing an offensive line is super crucial. You guys have not been able to do it outside of your top picks. So usually stick to your strengths and then kind of overcompensate for your weaknesses. And that's what I'm doing here. And then at number 31, this is a player I really wanted to sneak into one of these mock drafts. We have Mike Matthews, wide receiver out of Tennessee, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins Jeremiah Love, stud, Mateo Uyagale, really good pass rusher for Spags, and Antonio Williams, an every down wide receiver. I just think Mike Matthews could end up being just an absolute every down threat that you guys bring. And I mean, it could be too many mouths to feed. But at the same time, I think the value is impeccable for someone who has great deep threat ability with his release packages and his route running fakes. Definitely somebody that is going to be providing a little bit more than even Antonio Williams. I think Antonio's role will end up kind of overlapping what Hollywood Brown would end up being on this squad. And as a third rounder, I think that's adequate. Mike Matthews, I think, should end up having a much larger role there with Rashi Rice, kind of just being a dynamic duo. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, you just will have more of a complete wide receiver core in that way. And at number 32, and ending off this mock draft, we have Nico Iamaleava, quarterback out of UCLA. He joins CeCe Mauigoa, Keith Abney, and Zachariah Branch. I think you guys win the Super Bowl based on like how this team would end up panning out. And then on top of that, this is just a great way to get a developmental player with Stafford possibly retiring, maybe saying, hey, I got one more year left in me to be the coach of the quarterback of the future. We'll see. Thank you again for watching, showing the love you always do. See you later. Peace.